All right, so shifting on, and we're heading on to the NHL trade deadline news, of course, because there's a lot of rumors brewing up, and the guy really, really smart too. Great kid, knows a lot of his stuff, covers the NHL with the New Jersey Devils. He's joining me, Trey Matthews. So, all right, so I got news on this. We got a little clarity. So, it was just said from TSN that Timo Meier, that his two front runners are the Devils and the Vegas Golden Knights. So those are the two teams right now that are looking into it. I look at the Devils and I'm like, they get Timo Meier. That's a hyper aggressive team with Jack Hughes, who has officially arrived, by the way, and who's looking really, really good. How are you kind of outlooking this?
Well, I'm not sure if you saw the news or not, but Barbashev was actually just recently traded to the Vegas Golden Knights. So I think that puts the Vegas Golden Knights out of the running by default. And you need to remember that the Vegas Golden Knights prospect system, not really all that good. So
yeah, I agree.
I believe this is the New Jersey Devils' deal to lose at this point. Now, there are some backups that they could look at. You know, you can look at like Max Domi, you can look at Brock Besser. So if Timo Meier doesn't work, you still have some more options on the table. Now, I've said it on my show before, I would love to have Timo Meier on this roster, but for the right price. So I think what's stalling these negotiations is probably that I have a bad feeling that the San Jose Sharks are asking for Dawson Mercer. Now, my overall thing is simply this, which is given how well Dawson Mercer has performed the last few games, and that's me understating it. I think Dawson Mercer is off the table, and he's 21 years of age, and he has a bright future. So I think you would have to look at other players. So look at some of our prospects not named Luke Hughes or Shimon the Mets. But I think Timo Meier, the possibility of him becoming a Devil, I think it's a very, very good scenario and a good situation. However, I have been let down before.
Yeah, and it is interesting because the New Jersey Devils this year, I love the fact that they're building around with that young core with Will Butcher and, of course, Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes. So it is interesting to kind of look at with their young core, how they're building them up and how they're looking from it. So I do want to talk about the emergence of Jack Hughes because most people, when I saw this, I said, look, don't get ahead and don't fool yourselves. This is a real good hyper aggressive scorer who's going to find his groove, find his rhythm. This year he's an all-star and he's really looking like the promising prospect everybody in New Jersey's been looking for. How impressed have you been with watching him this season?
I've been impressed, but at the same time, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I kind of expected it because Devils fans saw his surgence last year, but the problem was he was hurt. So he got hurt the second game of the year, and then toward the end of the year, he didn't even finish. So we knew how good Jack Hughes was, but in his 40 or so games, he was able to put up 56 or so points. And so in limited playing time, Jack Hughes was able to just make the most of it. So we saw the potential. And I said before the start of the year that if Jack Hughes stays healthy and if he puts the New Jersey Devils in playoff contention, I'd say you have to put him into the running for the Hart Memorial Trophy because that essentially means he'll have a Taylor Hall type of year. So I knew it was a long shot. I knew a lot of people were going to give me a lot of crap for it, but it's coming into fruition. The Devils are second in the Metropolitan Division. They're within striking distance of the Carolina Hurricanes. Jack Hughes hasn't missed a beat ever since coming back from his day-to-day injury. It was an upper body kind of thing, but luckily he's fine and he's recovered nicely. And Devils are back to their winning ways. Just thrashed the Philadelphia Flyers 7-0 in their previous matchup. But Jack Hughes has been a great player for New Jersey Devils. I've had the chance to speak with him once. He's a man of few words, but he's proud of the team taking steps forward, and obviously he's taken a lot of steps. And he's also looking forward to his brother joining the roster within the next month or so once the University of Michigan's season comes to an end. So we can't wait to see Luke Hughes and see what he could do on the defensive side of things and possibly play with his brother long term. But overall, Jack Hughes has been the truth for New Jersey Devils. That's why I gave him the nickname the truth, because everything we've said about him has in fact come true. When he was drafted first overall, we said this kid can possibly lead us back into relevancy. This guy can be the future of the league. He could take over. And if it wasn't for Connor McDavid, and Connor McDavid somehow, some way taking his game to an even bigger level, an elite level status, more so than he usually does, then honestly, I think Jack Hughes would be the favorite to win the Hart Memorial Trophy, given the narrative. Devils were not projected to go to the playoffs. I don't know how many people projected for them to be lottery teams, but I'd say more people projected for them to finish into that position. No one anticipated for Jack Hughes to be this good. And now here we are. We're in late February. The New Jersey Devils, there's limited games left in the schedule, and barring anything catastrophic happening, like having one of the biggest collapses in all of sports, they're going back to the playoffs. And I didn't even mention the 13-game win streak. I didn't mention Jack Hughes' hat trick in late November. That's when I felt like he started to pick it up. But it's been a great year for Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier, and everything is just coming into fruition for the Devils organization.
Really exciting stuff. And there's two positions I definitely wanted to evaluate too that I thought have really moved what the Devils, what they needed to fulfill. So first of all, the goaltending with Vitek Vanechek. I mean, the funny thing is, and I had Dan Holme on the show, and he even said it too, like the inconsistencies he had in Washington has just gone away the second he went to New Jersey. How impactful has that been for Vanechek, really producing and really kind of being that force that the Devils needed when they needed to get offense going?
You know, it's funny for Vitek Vanechek. I actually said that the New Jersey Devils could hypothetically get him during the course of the offseason, because I said they would have to make a trade because he's a restricted free agent, not an unrestricted free agent. But the Devils were just searching for that suitable backup for Mackenzie Blackwood. So it was just like, who's available? Could it be Holtby? Could it be Kemper? Could it be Vanechek? Who's available? Could it be Husso? So the Devils were just searching for a suitable backup, because obviously we've kind of gotten to some bad luck with the Corey Crawford situation. We got into some bad luck with Jonathan Bernier and his situation. I don't think he's going to suit up in another NHL game ever again. But Vitek Vanechek, I think what people refer to for Vitek Vanechek was that during the course of the playoffs, yes, he made a lot of saves, but let's face it, if you look at his numbers first glance, you just see that he didn't really step up his game come the playoff time. So, and you solidify your legacy in the playoffs. So I think that's what Washington Capitals fans remember Vitek Vanechek for. But once he got to the Devils, it was just, and he was given that chance because remember, Mackenzie Blackwood went down with an MCL sprain, which sidelined him for an extended period of time. Vitek Vanechek he took leaps and bounds. He stepped up to the plate big time. He's become a fan favorite. And quite honestly, I think come next year, if he's able to continue what he was able to do this year, come next year, I think he could be in the running for the Vezina trophy race, because if he might get a few votes here and there, but at the same time, if he was like a favorite or whatever the case might be, it would be the most out of left field winner you had in recent memory. But I think he's getting his name into the NHL world just a little bit more, especially given how well the Devils have performed this year, because you got to look who's stepping up their game. You mentioned Jack Hughes. We mentioned Jesper Bratt. We mentioned Nico Hischier. Dougie Hamilton has come up big. Dawson Mercer has come up big. And Vitek Vanechek in between the pipes for the Devils has come up big. So I think Vitek Vanechek is making a name for himself in the NHL. And I think come next year, if he's able to repeat that same success, then I think he can legitimately have a fair shake at the Vezina Trophy race.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's kind of funny because I kind of put Vitek Vanechek in the same similar like diamond in the rough as I'm looking at Boston's Linus Ullmark. I mean, the fact that being in Buffalo and how he produced from there just didn't really look all that attractive. And then the second he comes into Boston with Swayman, like it worked out perfectly. Bruins are obviously on fire in the Eastern Conference. So I do want to revert back to that because Dougie Hamilton. So that's the interesting part. So I knew the second they got Dougie Hamilton, I said, this is a change in this defense. The defense is going to start to get better. And not to mention, too, the retiring of PK Subban. That had to open up some holes as well for New Jersey to really fill in. So how did you really evaluate this defense? And is there maybe something that could also be adjusted a little more, especially when you're playing Boston, you're playing Tampa, you're playing, the Carolina Hurricanes? Are there some names you're kind of looking at?
Well, with Dougie Hamilton, he's great on the offensive side of things, but his defense can be iffy at times. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not, but still a great big addition for New Jersey Devils. And when PK Subban retired, it was the question during the course of the offseason, who's going to take his space? And right now it seems like the New Jersey Devils, they have a revolving door for that final defensive spot. So we've seen Kevin Ball in the lineup. We've seen a lot of other prospects just go in and out of that last defensive role. I think next year it's going to be a competition between Shimon Nemeth and also Luke Hughes to see who gets that final defensive spot. But obviously you got Jonas Siegenthaler, you got Ryan Graves. You have a lot of solid pieces on the defensive side of things for the Devils. And also John Marino. John Marino, in my eyes, has been very underrated during the course of the year because we saw this especially during the 13-game win streak. He knows how to smother his opponents because the prime example that I use is when the New Jersey Devils played against the Edmonton Oilers. Mm-hmm. I saw John Marino take away the passing and shooting lanes of Connor McDavid, one of the greatest players to ever play the game. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just him. I saw like 3 skaters in front of Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl, whatever the case might be. Now, I know Connor McDavid scored in that game, but as the game progressed, I think the Devils did a good job of just taking away his airspace. And when I saw Connor McDavid also try to check John Marino into the boards at one point, John Marino shrugged it off, acted like it was nothing, didn't stumble, didn't fall, didn't do anything. He just maneuvered the puck back into neutral zone. So the defense has definitely been somewhat solid for New Jersey Devils during the course of this year. And I think they definitely have a bright future, like I just mentioned, with Luke Hughes and Shimon Nemeth set to possibly join the roster next year. So, the defense has been phenomenal. Ryan Graves, he has a great plus minus. And, I'm really excited to see how this defense develops going forward. Now, it's just a question like, what's going to happen to Brendan Smith? Because Brendan Smith, a lot of people don't really like him. But the one thing I say is that he's a good leader in the locker room. And it's proven to be dividend. It's been proven to be good dividends for New Jersey Devils because they needed some veteran leadership. And obviously with the addition of Andre Palat, Eric Holla, John Marino, a few others, you're able to get sort of that playoff experience and sort of players who've been in that situation before. But sometimes Brendan Smith gets costly penalties that aren't really necessary, to say the least. But overall, the defense, the blue line definitely has a bright future for the New Jersey Devils. And I'm excited to see what comes next year. And I think it's going to be friendly competition between the Mets and Luke Hughes, to see who can get that final defensive spot. But and also the big question mark is what's going to happen to Damon Severson, because regardless of what he does, I think he's the odd man out just because he's going to become I believe, a restricted free agent at the end of this year. And I believe this money can be used for good use elsewhere. So I think Damon Severson, his time as a New Jersey Devil, I think is starting to wind down, especially come the trade deadline. However, I haven't really heard his name into too many trade scenario discussions, but I think it's in the Devils' best interest to possibly trade him away. But along with Miles Wood, Mackenzie Blackwood, he's one of the longest tenured Devils, and obviously you want him to be a part of something special, especially since the New Jersey Devils are primed to make the playoffs.
Yeah, and so here's what I do want to discuss as well, because the NHL playoffs, we know the Eastern Conference is obviously brewing up. I mean, the fact that the Boston Bruins just made a big trade with Dmitry Orlov, so they got another added piece to add to their arsenal. The Toronto Maple Leafs, they added in Ryan O'Reilly. I like the move, that the fact that he's very productive, but is that the piece that's going to get them past their first round woes? I don't know. And then the Rangers acquired Vladimir Tarasenko, hyper-aggressive offense. That's going to be tough competition. So looking at the Eastern Conference, are there some teams that the Devils could possibly get fits from?
That's a good question. Basically get fits from.
Yeah, so basically teams that could be giving them a hard time.
It's so hard to analyze assess this team because, like I said at the beginning of the year, would you say that this was a playoff team? Yes or
Mhm.
no? Be honest.
I think by the beginning of the year, because of some of the moves, I think they would have been a playoff team, but they wouldn't have been in the position they are now in the Metropolitan. I think they would have snuck into that wild card spot.
Exactly. So the main goal for New Jersey Devils, because I think they're set to play the New York Rangers come the
Mhm.
first round, and
Mhm.
they've actually competed very hard against the Rangers during the course of this year because obviously this was before the Rangers made any moves. So they got Vladimir Tarasenko. That was on the trade target for New Jersey Devils as well.
Mhm.
I'd say their main goal for right now is get past the first round because
Yeah.
it's been a while since the New Jersey Devils have been competitive in the playoffs. You would have to go back to their Stanley Cup Finals run back in 2012 when they lost to the LA Kings, and
Mhm.
then a few years ago they played against the Tampa Bay Lightning and they were handled in 5 games. That was the year I believe Taylor Hall won the Hart Memorial Trophy.
Yep.
So it's just like the Devils want to be back to relevancy, like I said in regard to Jack Hughes. So I think their main goal is to get out of the first round, and then you build your team a little bit better come the off season. So I think that's the overall mindset. I think that's the overall goal for the Devils. Just get past the first round because could they hoist up the Stanley Cup? I don't personally see it. I don't think they're ready
Mhm.
because you have so many players who haven't seen the light of day after 82 games, including some of your best players like Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt. Nico Hischier has some playoff experience, but it's been a while. Andre
Mhm.
Palat has obviously won a couple Stanley Cups, and you got some other players who've made it into the playoffs, but still, it's not that much. So I think the Devils, they're just not quite ready yet to
Mhm.
compete for a Stanley Cup and hoist up the trophy. But at the same time, they got something special brewing. So I think at least my personal goal for them, get past the first round and then see where it goes from there. Because I think that's if they're able to get past the first round, I think they've shattered expectations if they haven't done so already.
Yeah, I agree with you because I know that the Eastern Conference is a very tough conference itself because I can honestly name at least like four teams that I know that are going to be really, really competitive, maybe a fifth, but there's even a mixture of some teams that can kind of, they're knocking on the door, they're sneaking in. There's some teams that can get past that first round, and then afterwards, that's as far as they go. But if there's a bright future for them, where it's like, that may have been that's our mark, but we ain't done yet. And then that's when the next year really goes on. That's where I really look at next year's off season and the draft, and then seeing how they really, really produce themselves. So, real quick before letting you go, so I did see some spurts with the Devils where they remembered the 2003 Stanley Cup Championship and the fact that the great Marty Brodeur, all the rest of the great players. I mean, what was that when you evaluated that 2003 team? What were some takes you got out of that team that something even the Devils would like to maybe bring back from there? Because I mean that was a special team from back then.
You know what? I'm actually going to rewind the clock back to 1995 because I actually interviewed recently Bruce Driver, who was a part of that 1995 Stanley Cup team for the New Jersey Devils, the team that won the first Stanley Cup in Devils history, and Bruce
Yeah.
Driver was one of the captains. So I asked him, like, does this current team compare to your Stanley Cup team? And the one thing that Bruce Driver told me was that, look, they were underdogs as well. That 1995 Stanley Cup team, they were projected to not really go that far, and they basically had to run that trap defense essentially. And they didn't use the word trap in their vocabulary. And personally, I think it's justifiable that the Devils used the trap defense because they were the underdogs. You got to do what you got to do to
Yep.
win. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, it made the game boring," or yada yada yada. They literally ran a playbook that I think the Montreal Canadiens first utilized, and no one
Yeah.
has a problem with that. So it's just like my overall thing is like they ran a playbook that worked for them. So Bruce Driver basically told me, like, look, they weren't favorites to win the Stanley Cup. They had to work for it.
Mm-hmm.
And he said when you get to the playoffs, it's a totally different animal.
Yeah.
So you got to like look at fatigue. You got to look at strength. You got to look at the overall mindset, because everyone is 0-0 to begin the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. And
So
you got to think that separates the boys from the men in the middle of all that.
absolutely. So, like I said, when I asked Bruce Driver, when you look at your Stanley Cup team and when you look at this one, is this a team that could win the Stanley Cup? He was just like, got to see what they do during the course of the playoffs, because obviously it's not just one done and then you move on to the next team. It's not even a home and home kind of scenario. This is a series, and you gotta beat them 4 times in order to advance.
Yeah, it's really true, man. I mean, it's a hard competition, and I love it too, because I haven't been so big in hockey like originally growing up, but once I started to really get into the game, like I had family that live in New York and they're big time, Ranger fans. But watching it bits and pieces, I was like, okay, I'm kind of understanding a little bit of it. And then sure enough, living in Vegas, the Golden Knights make their mark in 2017, which to me, I've always said was a fluke of a year, because of the fact of it was a battle cry year. It was one that it was a little lightning in a bottle. And then now they're trying to find their identity. So it's very difficult for a lot of teams to really win the Stanley Cup, because it's not only just the look and the weight of the trophy in your hands, it's what comes behind all of that. And I've had the chance to really get myself acquainted with Sir Stanley, and there's a lot of stories in front of it. But it's so exciting as hockey fans and even as hockey players out there, where that feeling of the Stanley Cup is just it blows out of proportion out of any other trophies you see in major sports. But yeah, it's going to be interesting watching this young core, but I'm very excited of what the development will be for the Devils. But come this trade deadline, March 3rd, I mean, the phones are going to be ringing. There's going to be a lot of outlooks, and with the amount of games
right
left,
now. They're ringing right now.
Oh yeah. So okay, we ain't done yet.
I don't know if this episode is live or not. Is it live?
Yep, it's live.
Okay, so as soon as I log off, Timo Meier might be heading to Newark at this very moment. We'll see.
Oh, man. If that happens, I mean, man, that is going to be something real special brewing up in the works for the Devils. All righty, Trey, I appreciate your time. Where can people find you with everything New Jersey Devils?
You can find my personal Twitter page at TreyMatt4, TreyMatt, and the number 4. And you can also find the show's Twitter page at Locked On Devils. I do a little bit of trolling, and it's a little bit of my secret identity in a sense. But, hey, I'm just having fun with it. So that's where you can find me. And, Jake, I want to apologize for appearing late, because, as you know, time zones are a little different since I actually live on the West Coast for the time being. So I just totally I totally got it mixed up. So I want to apologize in that regard.
Oh, no worries at all. And I've had a couple of guys, it's totally understandable. That's why I like clarifying a lot of the time zones. I do that for that reason, because I know a lot of people, it's like, are they West or East Coast? It does get a little difficult, but totally understandable, man. But I'm very happy you were able to come on. Great content with the Devils. And, of course, ASU grad as well, ASU student. So really excited for a lot of great things to come. You've got a lot of great potential in you, man. And a lot of people are going to be seeing your work and just going to be blown away. So appreciate the time, Trey. Have a great rest of your weekend. And let's just see how this back half of this season is going to turn out, and NHL playoffs around the corner. It's going to be full of just entertainment from there. Appreciate it. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Jake.
Absolutely. There you go, Trey Matthews, man.